It wasn't just a harvester. The boy fixes it and discovers something even the owner didn't know. Robert Thompson Wilson was ready to sell the farm. 3 consecutive failed harvests had drained all his savings, and the broken harvester in the barn was the symbol of all his failures. No mechanic in the area could get that machine working again. Then Ethan Collins showed up at the farm gate, carrying an old toolbox that had belonged to his grandfather. The boy, just 12 years old, with his worn-out cap and grease-stained work shirt, promised to fix the harvester no one else could get running. "Mr. Robert, I know you don't know me, but can I take a look at your machine?" Ethan said, adjusting the straps of his school backpack on his thin shoulders. Robert looked at the boy with a bitter half-smile. After 3 experienced mechanics had given up, here was a boy offering help. The situation would have been comical if it weren't so desperate. "Son, even the best in town couldn't fix it." "What could you possibly do at your age?" Robert replied, wiping his dirt-covered hands on his blue overalls. "My grandpa always said old machines have a soul, Mr. Robert. They just need someone who knows how to talk to them," Ethan insisted, opening the box to show the rusted but well-kept tools. Robert's wife, Melissa, appeared on the porch of their simple wooden house. She had been watching the conversation from the kitchen window while preparing lunch with the few ingredients left from their last trip to town. "Robert, let the boy try. What do we have to lose?" Melissa said, drying her hands on the flowered apron she'd worn for over 10 years. Robert let out a deep sigh. The truth was, he had nothing left to lose. The 20-acre farm he'd inherited from his father was about to be sold to pay off debts. If the boy wanted to waste time with the harvester, at least he'd have peace to sort out the final sale papers. "All right, Ethan, but you're working for free, understand?" "I don't have a single dollar to pay you," Robert said, walking toward the rusted tin barn. "I don't want money, Mr. Robert. I just want to learn and help," Ethan replied, following the farmer with quick steps. The barn smelled of burnt oil and rust. The yellow and green harvester, a Green Eagle from the 1980s, took up nearly all the space. Parts scattered on the ground showed the many failed repair attempts. Ethan studied the machine in silence for a few minutes, walking around it as if solving a complex puzzle. His small hands touched the metal surfaces gently, almost like a caress. "Can I start working tomorrow morning, Mr. Robert? Today I just want to understand what it's trying to tell me," Ethan said, kneeling beside the engine. Robert found the boy's way of talking about the machine odd, but nodded. He had work in the pasture to finish before dark. The cows needed to be brought to the pen, and the leftover corn from the last planting had to be spread in the trough. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the farm early. The sun was just rising behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. The boy had walked nearly 3 miles from the house he shared with his grandmother, Mrs. Margaret, on the outskirts of Pinewood Creek. Robert was milking the 3 cows left from what had once been a herd of over 50. The sound of metal buckets echoed in the morning silence, mixed with the low mooing of the animals. "Good morning, Mr. Robert," Ethan called from the entrance of the barn. "Good morning, son. You can start whenever you're ready. Just don't touch the parts set aside over there in the corner," Robert Thompson Wilson replied, without stopping his milking. Ethan opened his toolbox and got to work. First, he carefully removed the engine cover, examining every bolt and wire. Unlike other mechanics, he wasn't in a hurry. Each movement was deliberate, as if he were speaking to the machine in a silent language. After 2 hours of work, Ethan noticed something odd. There was a welded compartment on the side of the engine that wasn't mentioned in the machine's manual. The weld was old, but didn't look factory-made. Someone had modified the harvester years ago. "That's strange," Ethan murmured, running his fingers over the weld. With a small screwdriver and a lot of patience, the boy managed to open the compartment. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was an old photo of a woman holding a baby. The image had yellowed with time, but the faces were still clear. Ethan carefully picked up the photo and realized there was more inside. Aged documents were rolled up behind the picture, along with a small, peculiar key that didn't seem to fit any ordinary lock. "Mr. Robert, come see this," Ethan shouted, running toward the corral. Robert Thompson Wilson dropped the milk bucket and hurried to the barn. When he saw the photo in Ethan's hands, his face turned as pale as paper. His hands trembled and he had to steady himself against the harvester. Where did you find this?" Robert whispered, his voice choked. "It was inside the machine, Mr. Robert. There's a hidden compartment here," Ethan explained, confused by the farmer's reaction. Robert tried to snatch the photo from the boy's hands, but Ethan instinctively pulled back. In the movement, some papers fell to the ground. One was a birth certificate, and Ethan managed to read the name before Robert grabbed it. Robert Thompson Walker, not Wilson as everyone knew him. "Why is your name different on this paper, Mr. Robert?" Ethan asked, bewildered. Before Robert could answer, Melissa appeared at the barn door. She had heard the shouting and came to see what was happening. When she saw the photo in her husband's hands, she froze. "Robert, is that Jennifer?" Melissa asked, tears welling in her eyes. "Who's Jennifer?" Ethan asked, looking between the two adults who seemed to have seen a ghost. Robert closed his eyes and took a deep breath. After 30 years of keeping secrets, it seemed the past had found a way to resurface through the curious hands of a boy. "Jennifer was my sister," Melissa said, her voice shaking. "She disappeared over 20 years ago." Ethan looked at the photo again. The woman resembled Melissa, especially the green eyes and the shape of her face. The baby in her arms couldn't have been more than a few months old. "But why was the photo hidden in the harvester?" Ethan pressed. Robert sat on an empty barrel, burying his head in his hands. The weight of years of silence was finally taking its toll. Melissa stepped closer, placing a hand on her husband's shoulder. "Tell him, Robert. After all this time, maybe it's time for the truth to come out," Melissa said softly. Robert lifted his head and looked at Ethan. The boy waited, eyes full of curiosity, still holding some of the fallen documents. Jennifer was Melissa's sister, and she was seeing a boy from town. A good mechanic, hard-working, but her family didn't approve, Robert began, his voice rough. "Why didn't they approve?" Ethan asked. "Because he was poor, Ethan. Back then, families cared a lot about those things. Melissa's father wanted Jennifer to marry a wealthy farmer, not a mechanic who barely had 2 pennies to rub together," Robert explained. Melissa sat beside her husband, wiping the tears streaming down her face. "Jennifer got pregnant, and when my father found out, he kicked her out of the house, said she had dishonored the family." Melissa continued the story. "And the baby in the photo?" Ethan asked, looking at the picture again. "That was her child with the mechanic. They tried to build a life together, but—" Robert trailed off, as if the words were too painful to say. Ethan kept sifting through the documents as he listened. Among the papers, he found unopened letters, all addressed to Robert Thompson Wilson, but returned to sender. The dates showed someone had tried reaching him for years. "Mr. Robert, there are so many letters here." All returned. Ethan held up the yellowed envelopes. Robert took one with trembling hands. The sender was someone named Michael Collins from Clearwater, 300 kilometers away. "Michael Collins," Robert murmured. "That was the mechanic's name." "Jennifer's boyfriend?" Ethan asked. "Ex-boyfriend," Robert corrected, bitterness in his voice. "He left her when he found out she was pregnant." Melissa stared at her husband, shocked. "Robert, you never told me that. How do you know he left her?" Robert fell silent, realizing he'd said too much. Ethan used the pause to keep exploring the hidden compartment. There was more inside. Carefully, he pulled out a small leather-bound journal. The pages were faded, but the writing was still legible. On the first page, it read, "Property of Michael Collins. Notes on the Green Eagle Harvester, 1981. Mr. Robert, this journal has the mechanic's name, and he wrote about this harvester," Ethan said, flipping through the pages. Robert reached for it, but Ethan was already reading an entry aloud. "March 15th, 1995. Finished installing the hidden compartment. Jennifer asked me to hide the baby's documents until we could marry properly. Robert Thompson must not find the papers, or he'll try to separate us again." The silence in the barn was deafening. Melissa looked at her husband, shock and anger rising in her expression. "Robert, what does this mean? What did you do?" Her voice grew louder. Ethan kept reading, unaware of the tension. March 20th. Robert Thompson offered me money to leave town. Said Jennifer deserved better than a broke mechanic. I refused, but he threatened to tell everyone the baby wasn't mine. Robert Thompson, Melissa shouted, jumping to her feet. You lied to my sister? You tore her away from her child's father? Robert stood too, fists clenched, his face red with rage and shame. I did what was best for everyone. That mechanic couldn't support a family. That wasn't your choice to make, Melissa shot back, angry tears falling. Ethan watched silently, still holding the journal. He'd never seen adults fight like this, unsure if he should stay or leave. There's more written here, he said softly, trying to diffuse the argument. Melissa turned to him, wiping her tears with her sleeve. Read it, Ethan. I want the whole truth, she said, glaring at her husband. Ethan flipped through a few pages and continued. March 25th. Robert Thompson bought my harvester for a price way above market value. I suspect it's to push me away from here. Jennifer is devastated, thinking I'm leaving because I don't want to take responsibility for the baby. I need to find a way to prove my love to her. You bought his harvester? Melissa asked, incredulous. It was a good machine, and we needed one. Robert Thompson tried to justify himself. Lies! Melissa shouted. You had just bought a brand new harvester that year. I remember. Ethan turned a few more pages of the diary and found an entry that made his heart race. March 30th. I found out Robert Thompson spread lies about me in town. Everyone thinks I abandoned Jennifer and ran off with the money from the harvester sale. I'll try to talk to her one last time, but if I can't, I'll leave for real. I can't live in a town where everyone sees me as a coward. Melissa sat on the ground, sobbing. 30 years of marriage to a man who had destroyed her sister's life out of jealousy and pride. She felt betrayed not just as a wife but as a sister, who never knew the truth. Where is my sister now, Robert? You know, don't you? Melissa asked between sobs. Robert Thompson stayed silent, staring at the dirt floor of the shed. Ethan kept reading the diary, searching for more information. April 5th. Jennifer disappeared. Mrs. Rose said she took the baby and left before dawn. She left a note saying she couldn't bear living in a town where everyone judged her. Robert Thompson got what he wanted. I'll look for her, even if I have to turn the whole country upside down. He went after her, Ethan said. The mechanic went looking for your sister. Melissa lifted her head, a spark of hope in her eyes. Is there anything else written? Any clue about where they went? Ethan quickly flipped through the rest of the diary. Most pages were blank, but in the last few, there were some different notes. September 1995, I found a lead. Jennifer might be in the Clearwater area. I'll sell everything I have and move there. If I find her, we'll start over far from here. Clearwater, Melissa murmured. It's the same address as the returned letters. Ethan looked at the small key he had found with the documents. Mr. Robert, what's this key for? Robert Thompson glanced at the key, his expression growing even darker. I don't know, he lied, but Ethan could tell he was hiding something. The boy examined the key more closely. It had numbers engraved. 237. It looked like it belonged to a safe or locker. There are numbers here, look. 237, Ethan showed Melissa. Just then, an old pickup truck pulled into the farm, kicking up dust. It was Mrs. Margaret, Ethan's grandmother, who had come looking for her grandson. Ethan, what are you still doing here? It's way past lunchtime, she shouted from the car window. Grandma, wait, I'm figuring out something important here, Ethan replied. Mrs. Margaret stepped out of the pickup and walked toward the shed. She was a woman nearing 70, but still strong and determined. Her grey hair was tied in a simple bun, and she wore a faded blue dress. When she saw the harvester, she stopped abruptly. Good heavens, she whispered. What is it, Grandma? Ethan asked. That harvester. I know this machine, Mrs. Margaret said, slowly approaching. Robert Thompson and Melissa looked at the woman curiously. What do you mean you know it, Mrs. Margaret? Melissa asked. My son-in-law worked on this machine for months. He was a mechanic, you know. Spent weeks fixing and modifying it for the previous owner, Mrs. Margaret explained. Ethan felt a chill in his stomach. Your son-in-law, Grandma? My dad was a mechanic. Mrs. Margaret looked at her grandson in surprise. Of course he was, boy. Didn't you know? Michael Collins, the best mechanic in the region, at least until you were born. The silence in the shed was absolute. Ethan looked at the diary in his hands and then at his grandmother. Grandma, was my father's name Michael Collins? Of course, Ethan. Why are you asking such an obvious thing? Ethan showed the diary to his grandmother, because this diary belonged to a mechanic named Michael Collins, and he wrote about this harvester. Mrs. Margaret took the diary with trembling hands and flipped through some pages. Her tears began to fall when she recognized her son-in-law's handwriting. It's his writing. It's Michael's, she confirmed, sobbing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Ethan felt as if the world had turned upside down. His whole life he'd believed his father had abandoned him as a baby. Mrs. Margaret had always said he'd left to work in another town and never returned. Grandma, but you always said my father left and abandoned me, Ethan said, his voice choked. It wasn't quite like that, my grandson. He went looking for your mother. He promised he'd come back for you, but Mrs. Margaret paused, looking at Robert Thompson with growing understanding. But what, Grandma? We never understood why he didn't return. The letters we sent always came back. It was as if he'd vanished off the face of the earth, Mrs. Margaret explained. Melissa stood up, wiping her tears. Mrs. Margaret, are you saying Ethan is Michael's son, the mechanic who dated my sister? That's right. Ethan is Michael and Jennifer's son. They dated for 2 years before everything went wrong, Mrs. Margaret confirmed. Ethan stared at Melissa with wide eyes. So you're my aunt? Melissa knelt in front of Ethan, holding the boy's face in her hands. It seems so, my dear. You're my nephew. Robert Thompson watched everything in silence, guilt weighing on his shoulders like a mountain. He'd torn an entire family apart with his lies and manipulations. Now, 15 years later, the truth was coming to light through the skilled hands of the very son of the couple he'd destroyed. Mr. Robert, Ethan said, turning to the farmer. Where are my parents now? Robert Thompson couldn't look the boy in the eye. I don't know, he lied again. Mrs. Margaret, who'd known Robert Thompson for years, sensed he was hiding something. Robert Thompson Wilson, or Walker, or whatever your real name is, you'll tell me right now where my son-in-law is, or I'll make a scene the whole town will hear, she threatened, pointing her finger at him. Mrs. Margaret, Robert Thompson tried to speak. Spit it out, she shouted, with surprising strength for her age. Robert Thompson sat back on the drum, defeated. Clearwater, they're in Clearwater. How do you know that? Melissa asked. Because I got a letter from him 3 years ago. He was looking for Ethan, wanted to know if the boy was okay, Robert Thompson confessed. Ethan felt a mix of anger and hope. And you didn't tell my grandmother anything? I thought it was better to leave things as they were. You had a stable life here. Stable? Mrs. Margaret exploded. My grandson grew up his whole life thinking his father didn't love him. You call that stable? Ethan stood up, still holding the mysterious key. I want to go to Clearwater. I want to find my parents. Ethan, my boy, Clearwater is 300 miles from here. We don't have the money for a trip like that, Mrs. Margaret said sadly. It was then that Ethan remembered the key. It had numbers engraved on it, and perhaps it was important. Mr. Robert, are you sure you don't know what this key is for? Robert Thompson looked at the key again. He knew exactly what it was for, but he had hoped Ethan would never find it. It's for the bank vault, branch 237 of the National Trust Bank in town, he confessed, defeated. What vault? Melissa asked. Michael left a rented vault at the bank before he left. He said it was for his son's future. The key was hidden in the Green Eagle harvester because he didn't want anyone to find it before the right time. Ethan looked at the key in his small hands. His father had left something for him, even after all these years. Let's go to the bank, Ethan said firmly. Ethan, banks don't let minors open vaults, Mrs. Margaret explained. "But I can go with you as the legal guardian," Melissa said. "As his aunt, I have rights." Robert Thompson stood up, knowing he could no longer stop what was happening. I'll go with you. It's time to fix what I broke." An hour later, the four of them were at the town's bank branch. The manager, a middle-aged man named Richard, greeted them curiously when Ethan explained the situation. "It's an interesting story, but I need documents proving the family relationship," Richard explained. Melissa showed her birth certificate and Jennifer's, proving they were sisters. Mrs. Margaret presented Ethan's birth certificate, which listed him as the son of Michael Collins and Jennifer Walker. "Everything seems to be in order. Let's check the vault," Richard said, leading the group to the bank's basement. Vault 237 was in a refrigerated room, alongside dozens of others. Richard used Ethan's key and his own master key to open the compartment. Inside was a simple wooden box, along with a few sealed envelopes. Ethan picked up the box with trembling hands. "You can open it here if you'd like," Richard said, stepping out to give the family privacy. Ethan opened the box slowly. Inside were some photos of him as a baby with Mrs. Margaret. There was also a letter addressed to him and another to Mrs. Margaret. "Read yours first, Grandma," Ethan said, handing the letter to his grandmother. Mrs. Margaret carefully opened the envelope and began reading aloud. "Dear Margaret, if you're reading this letter, it means Ethan has found the key I hid. I couldn't come back for you as promised, but it wasn't for lack of love or effort. Robert Thompson spread lies about me in town, and when I arrived in Clearwater looking for Jennifer, I found out she had lost the baby because of the stress from our separation." Ethan felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "Lost the baby?" he asked. Mrs. Margaret continued reading. "Jennifer was devastated and fell ill. I spent years caring for her, trying to help her recover. When she finally did, we found out we couldn't have other children. That's when I decided to adopt a child to honor the memory of the son we lost. Ethan isn't our biological child, but he is the child of our hearts." The room fell completely silent. Ethan looked at his grandmother, then at Melissa, trying to process the information. "I'm adopted?" he asked. "It seems so, my dear," Melissa said softly, holding his hand. Mrs. Margaret continued reading. "When I found out Margaret was raising Ethan alone, I wanted to return immediately, but Jennifer was too fragile, and the doctors said she wouldn't survive a long trip. We decided to stay in Clearwater and send money to help with Ethan's expenses. Every letter we sent was returned, so I figured Robert Thompson was intercepting our mail." Robert Thompson lowered his head, confirming the suspicion. "I leave this safe with enough money to educate Ethan and give him every opportunity I never had. If he's reading this, it's because he's grown into a smart and capable young man. Jennifer and I are building a school in Clearwater for underprivileged children. Ethan will always have a place with us whenever he wants. With love, Michael Collins." Ethan held his letter with trembling hands. Inside the envelope was another photo, this time of a man and woman smiling beside a construction site. On the back was written, "Dad Michael and Mom Jennifer, Hope Academy, Clearwater, 2010. He opened the letter addressed to him. "My dear Ethan, if you're reading this, you must already be a big, clever young man. I know you must be confused about many things, but I want you to know you were the greatest gift we ever received. When Jennifer lost our first baby, we thought we'd never be happy again. But then you came into our lives, bringing light to our darkest days." Ethan wiped away the tears that had begun to fall. "You were born to other parents, but we chose you to be our son. And choosing is far stronger than simply receiving. We hope that when you grow up, you'll come visit us at the school we built. There you'll find other children who, like you, needed a new family. With all the love in the world, Dad Michael." Inside the box was also a considerable amount of money, enough to cover the trip to Clearwater and much more. "Ethan," Melissa said softly, "do you want to go meet them?" Ethan looked at his grandmother, who was smiling through her tears. "Will you be okay without me, Grandma?" "My grandson, I'll be happy knowing you're with your complete family. And Clearwater isn't the other side of the world. I can visit whenever I want." Robert Thompson Wilson approached Ethan, tears in his eyes. "Ethan, I know you have every right to hate me. I ruined so much out of pride and jealousy, but I want you to know I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did wrong." Ethan looked at the man who had torn his family apart for so long. Part of him felt anger, but another part felt pity. Robert had lost his farm, his wife was furious with him, and now everyone knew about the lies he'd told. "Mr. Robert, you can start by making things right with Melissa. She didn't deserve to be deceived for so long." Melissa looked at Ethan with admiration. Even as a child, he had more wisdom than many adults. "Melissa," Robert said, turning to his wife, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but Robert, we'll talk at home. First, let's help Ethan find his parents," Melissa interrupted. 3 days later, Ethan sat in the front seat of Mrs. Margaret's pickup truck, traveling through the roads of Pennsylvania toward Clearwater. Melissa had decided to join them, leaving Robert alone at the farm to reflect on his actions. The trip took nearly 5 hours, with stops for rest and gas. Ethan spent the time watching the scenery and imagining what it would be like to reunite with the parents he'd never consciously known. When they reached the entrance to Clearwater, Ethan grew nervous. What if his parents no longer wanted to see him? What if they'd built a new life and he was just a complication? "Grandma, what if they don't want me to be part of their family anymore?" "Ethan, my dear, you saw the letters. They love you more than anything in this world. The only reason they didn't come back was because they thought you were better off without them," Mrs. Margaret explained. They stopped at a gas station to ask about Hope Academy. The attendant, a young man, smiled when he heard the name. "Oh, Mr. Michael and Mrs. Jennifer's school. Everyone around here knows them. They do beautiful work with the underprivileged children in the area. It's about 5 kilometers from here, on the road to the district of St. Joseph." Ethan felt his heart race. His parents were well known and respected in town. They had truly built a new life by helping other children. When they arrived at the school, Ethan was impressed. It was a simple but well-kept building, painted blue and white, with a playground in the yard and several children playing. A sign at the entrance read, "Hope Academy, founded in 2005 by Michael Collins and Jennifer Walker Collins." "They got married," Melissa observed, noticing Jennifer's double last name. A woman around 45 years old was supervising the children in the yard. She had brown hair with a few streaks of gray and a kind smile. When she saw the group approaching, she came to greet them. "Good afternoon. Are you here to visit the school?" she asked. Ethan looked at her and immediately recognized the features from the old photo. It was Jennifer, his mother, older now but still with the same gentle green eyes. "Mrs. Jennifer?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "Yes, that's me. Do I know you from somewhere?" Jennifer asked, puzzled. Ethan glanced at Mrs. Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. "My name is Ethan Collins. I'm your son." Jennifer stood frozen for a moment, as if she hadn't understood. Then her eyes filled with tears and she brought her hands to her mouth. "Ethan, my Ethan," she whispered. "Yes, Mom," Ethan said, and those 2 words were enough to break down every barrier. Jennifer knelt and hugged Ethan with a strength that seemed to make up for all the lost years. The children in the yard stopped playing to watch the emotional scene. "Michael!" Jennifer shouted, still holding Ethan. "Michael! Come here, quick!" A man around 50 years old came running out of the school building. He was tall and sturdy, with graying hair and calloused hands from hard work. When he saw Ethan in Jennifer's arms, he stopped abruptly. "Is it him?" Michael asked, his voice choked. "It's our son, Michael. Our Ethan has come home," Jennifer replied, still hugging the boy. Michael approached slowly, as if afraid it was all a dream. When he finally embraced Ethan and Jennifer together, he began to cry like a child. "My son, my boy. I thought I'd never see you again," Michael sobbed. The school children gathered around the family, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensing the emotion of the moment. Some teachers also came out to see what was going on. "How did you find us, Ethan?" Jennifer asked, wiping her tears. "It's a long story, Mom, but it started when I fixed a combine harvester," Ethan answered, smiling through his tears. Michael grinned when he heard that. "You inherited my way with machines, didn't you?" "Seems like it, Dad," Mrs. Margaret and Melissa watched the reunion with tears in their eyes. After 15 years, the family was finally together. "Jennifer," Melissa said softly, "I'm your sister, Melissa." Jennifer looked at her and immediately recognized her despite the years. "Melissa? My little sister?" Jennifer asked in disbelief. The two sisters embraced, crying and laughing at the same time. 15 years of separation melted away in seconds. "I thought you hated me for running away like that," Jennifer said. "I never knew the truth about what happened. Robert hid everything from me," Melissa explained. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Over the next few hours, the family gathered in the modest home Michael and Jennifer had built next to the school. Ethan told the whole story of the combine harvester, the hidden documents, and Robert Thompson's lies. "I always knew there was something wrong with that story," Michael said. "When I arrived in Clearwater looking for Jennifer, she was in the hospital. She had lost the baby because of stress and depression." "It was the worst time of my life," Jennifer added. "I thought you had abandoned me, and losing the baby felt like losing the last hope I had left." By the time we finally got in touch and discovered the truth, Jennifer was already too weak to travel. "And the letters we sent always came back," Michael continued. "Robert Thompson intercepted everything," Melissa explained. "He admitted he received your letters and sent them back so you'd think we didn't want contact." Ethan listened carefully to the whole story, finally understanding why he had grown up without his parents. It hadn't been abandonment. It had been a series of cruel manipulations that tore apart people who loved each other. "But how did I end up at Grandma Margaret's house?" Ethan asked. Mrs. Margaret, who had been quiet during the conversation, finally spoke. "Ethan, you were found on the church steps when you were just a few days old. There was a note saying your parents couldn't care for you and asking someone to give you love. Since I had lost my own daughter in childbirth a few years before, I decided to adopt you." "So my birth parents really did abandon me?" Ethan asked, feeling a pang of sadness. "Ethan," Michael said, holding the boy's hands, "it doesn't matter who brought you into this world. You're our son by choice, by love, by commitment. And that's much stronger than any blood tie." "It's true, my dear," Jennifer added. "When we decided to adopt you, it was because we wanted to build a family with you. You weren't abandoned. You were given to someone who could love you the way you deserved." Ethan smiled, feeling a peace he had never known before. For the first time in his life, he felt whole, surrounded by people who truly loved him. "So now, will I live here with you?" Ethan asked. "If you want to," Jennifer replied. "But we know you have a life in Pinewood Creek with your grandmother, your friends, your school." "Actually," Mrs. Margaret interrupted, "I've been thinking of moving here too. There's nothing left for me there, and here I can help you at the school." "That would be wonderful, Margaret," Michael said. "We always need more help with the children." Melissa, who had been thoughtful during the conversation, finally spoke. "I also want to make a change in my life. Robert Thompson and I need to have a serious talk about our marriage. I don't know if I can forgive what he did." "Melissa, everyone deserves a second chance," Jennifer said. "Robert Thompson made terrible mistakes, but if he's willing to change, I'll think about it," Melissa replied. "For now, I just want to get to know my nephew better and make up for lost time with my sister." In the days that followed, Ethan got to know the routine at Hope Academy. There were 40 children enrolled, ranging from 5 to 15 years old. All came from poor families in the area, and many were orphans or had been abandoned. "Every child here has a story like yours, Ethan," Jennifer explained as they walked through the schoolyard. They all needed a second chance in life. Ethan immediately connected with the other children. He began helping Michael in the mechanics workshop, which was part of the school's activities, teaching the older boys how to fix engines and farm equipment. "You have a special gift, Ethan," Michael said, watching as the boy patiently explained to a 14-year-old how to change a tractor's oil. "It's not just mechanical skill. You know how to teach." During one of the practical lessons, Ethan had an idea. "Dad, what if we set up a program where kids from the school learn to fix the farmers' machines in the area? That way they can earn money to help their families and also learn a trade." Michael smiled, proud of his son's cleverness. "That's a brilliant idea. Let's talk to your mom about it." Melissa was delighted by Ethan's proposal. Within weeks, they organized the Young Mechanics Project, where the older kids at the school offered maintenance and repair services to the local community. The idea was an instant success. Farmers in the area started coming to the school for small repairs on tractors, water pumps, and other farm equipment. The children learned a useful trade while also helping support the school. "Ethan has transformed this place," Melissa said to Michael one evening after all the children had gone to bed. "He didn't just find his family, he found his purpose," Michael replied. Meanwhile, in Pinewood Creek, Robert Thompson was deep in thought. Alone on the farm, he had begun selling off land to pay his debts and compensate those he had wronged over the years. He wrote a long letter to Michael and Melissa, asking forgiveness for everything he had done. In the letter, he offered to donate part of the money from the farm sale to Hope Academy, hoping to make amends for at least some of the harm he had caused. When the letter arrived, Ethan was the first to defend him. "I think we should accept his help. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right." "You're very wise for a 12-year-old, Melissa said, hugging her son. "I've learned that holding on to anger only hurts us. Mr. Robert was wrong, but he's trying to fix things. And the money could help a lot of kids here at school." Michael and Melissa decided to accept the donation, but on one condition: Robert Thompson had to come to Clearwater in person to talk with them and Ethan. 2 weeks later, Robert arrived at the school with Jennifer by his side. He looked noticeably thinner and worn down, carrying the weight of guilt on his shoulders. The meeting was tense at first. Michael had years of forced separation fueling his resentment. Melissa was hurt by the lies that had torn their family apart, but Ethan, with his childlike wisdom, broke the ice. "Mr. Robert, would you like to see the school? I can show you what we've done with the money you sent," Ethan offered. Robert was stunned by the boy's kindness after all he had done. You're not angry with me, Ethan." "I was, yes. But my mom taught me that anger only hurts the one who holds onto it. And besides, if you hadn't bought my dad's harvester, I never would have found the hidden documents." Robert began to cry, moved by the goodness of a child he had harmed so deeply. "Ethan, you're a better person than I deserve. Everyone deserves a second chance, Mr. Robert. Even you." During his visit to the school, Robert was amazed by the work Michael and Melissa were doing. He saw happy, well-cared-for children learning not just school subjects, but life values and useful trades. "You've built something beautiful here," he told Michael. "We've built a new family," Michael replied. "Something that should have happened 15 years ago." "I know I can't undo what I've done, but I can try to help build a better future," Robert said. "How so?" Melissa asked. "I want to fund the construction of a new wing for the school, and I'd also like to help with the monthly expenses. Not as a way to buy forgiveness, but as a way to honor the memory of the man I should have been." Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. The offer was generous, but they needed to be sure it was sincere. "Robert," Michael said, "we accept your help, but with a few conditions." "What are they?" "First, you must commit to working on your own reform. Seek psychological help. Understand why you did what you did, and make sure you never harm other families again." "I accept." "Second, you must genuinely reconcile with Melissa. She's the one who suffered the most from your lies, aside from Ethan." Robert looked at his wife, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. "Melissa, I know I broke your trust. I know I deserve for you to leave me. But if you give me a chance, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve." Melissa took a deep breath before answering. "Robert, I need time. 15 years of marriage built on a lie can't be fixed overnight. But I'm willing to try, if you truly change." Ethan watched the whole conversation carefully. It was amazing how adults could complicate things that should be simple, but he understood some wounds take longer to heal. 3 months later, the new wing of Hope Academy was inaugurated. The new building had 5 classrooms, a library, a computer lab, and a fully equipped mechanical workshop. Ethan cut the ribbon alongside Michael and Jennifer. The ceremony brought together the entire Clearwater community, as well as people from neighboring towns who had heard about the school's work. "A year ago, I was a boy who thought his father had abandoned him," Ethan said during his inauguration speech. "Today I know I have a family who chose me out of love, and an entire community that welcomed me. This school isn't just a place of education, it's a place where families are formed and dreams come true." In the audience, Mrs. Margaret wept with pride. She had settled perfectly into life in Clearwater, helping Jennifer with school administration and caring for the younger children as if they were her own grandchildren. Robert and Melissa were also present. They had started couples therapy and were slowly rebuilding their relationship on a stronger foundation of honesty and mutual respect. After the ceremony, Ethan found a moment alone with his parents. "Dad, Mom, I want to thank you for choosing me as your son." "Ethan," Jennifer said, hugging the boy, "you chose us when you decided to fix that combine harvester. You were the one who brought us home." "It's true," Michael added. "You didn't just fix a broken machine, you fixed a broken family." Ethan smiled, looking at the school full of children playing and learning. "You know what's the best part of all this?" he said. "What?" Jennifer and Michael asked together. "Now I understand why my grandfather always said machines have souls. That combine harvester held our story for 15 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. It knew that one day I'd show up to fix it and discover the secret." Michael laughed, hugging his son. "You're right. Machines really do have souls. And sometimes they know exactly how to bring the right people together at the right time." 6 months later, Hope Academy had become a regional model. The Young Mechanics Project expanded to include woodworking, sewing, and sustainable farming courses. The children at the school didn't just receive a formal education, they also learned trades that would help them build a better future. Ethan had become Michael's official assistant in the workshop and also helped teach basic mechanics to the younger children. His natural skill with machines, combined with his patience for teaching, made him a born instructor. One day, while repairing an old tractor, Michael asked a question Ethan had long been waiting for. "Ethan, would you like me to teach you how to drive?" "Really, Dad? I'm only 12. Here on the farm, far from the road, it's no problem. Besides, every good mechanic needs to know how machines behave when they're running." Ethan beamed. Driving had been a dream of his since childhood, always imagining what it would be like to control a big, powerful machine. The first lessons were on the school's tractor, an old but reliable machine Michael used to teach the older students. Ethan learned quickly, with the same natural ease he had for fixing engines. "You have the gift," Michael said, watching how smoothly Ethan handled the controls. "It's not just technical skill, you understand how machines think." Meanwhile, Jennifer developed a special program at the school called Family Stories. Once a week, the children shared their own stories, some sad, others hopeful, all important. Ethan participated actively, telling his story about the combine harvester to the younger kids. Many of them related to the feeling of abandonment and the search for a true family. "The most important thing I've learned," Ethan told the other children, "is that family isn't just who brought us into the world. Family is who chooses to stay with us, love us, and help us grow." One of the school children, an 8-year-old girl named Emily, had grown especially attached to Ethan. She too had been found as a baby and raised by adoptive parents until she was 5, when they passed away in an accident. "Ethan, do you think I'll ever find a real family too?" Emily asked one afternoon while helping in the workshop. "I'm sure of it, Emily, but you know the secret." "What?" "Sometimes the family we're looking for is right in front of us, and we don't even notice. Look around. You have Aunt Jennifer, Uncle Michael, Grandma Margaret, me, and all the other kids at school. We're already your family." Emily smiled, finally understanding she didn't need to wait for a perfect family. She already had a real one, full of love. The success of Hope Academy began attracting attention from other towns. Groups of educators visited to learn about the integrated teaching methods Jennifer and Michael had developed. One day, the mayor of Clearwater came to discuss the possibility of expanding the project into a public school while keeping the same philosophy and teaching methods. "You've revolutionized education in our region," the mayor said. "The children who study here don't just learn school subjects, they learn to be better citizens." "That's always been our goal," Jennifer replied. "Education isn't just about academic knowledge, It's about shaping good people who can change the world around them. Ethan listened with interest. The idea of expanding the school to serve more children was exciting, but he also worried the project's family-like essence might be lost. "Mayor," Ethan respectfully interrupted, "if you expand the school, how will you make sure it stays a place where children feel like family?" The mayor was impressed by the maturity of the question. "That's a valid concern, Ethan. What suggestion would you give?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "I think each class could have a father or mother figure responsible for them like we have here. And the older children could help take care of the younger ones, creating true bonds of brotherhood." "Brilliant," the mayor said. "You've truly created something special here." As expansion plans were discussed, Ethan continued developing his skills. He had become the best mechanic student Michael had ever taught, capable of diagnosing complex machine problems just by the sound of the engine. One afternoon, a local farmer brought in a modern harvester that none of the town's mechanics could fix. The issue was in the electronic system, something far more complex than the older machines Ethan was used to. "I'm not sure I can help with this one, Mr. Anthony," Ethan said, examining the machine's digital panel. "It's much more advanced than what I know." "Ethan," Michael said, "how about we use this as a learning opportunity? We can study the technical manual together and try to understand how these new systems work." Ethan was excited by the challenge. He spent 2 weeks studying technical manuals and electronic diagrams, learning about sensors, microprocessors, and digital systems. When he finally managed to identify and fix the problem, a faulty moisture sensor sending incorrect data to the central computer, he felt even prouder than the first time he'd repaired a machine. "Dad, I want to keep studying electronics," Ethan said. "Machines are getting more advanced, and I want to know how to fix all of them." "Then we'll find you a technical course," Michael replied, proud of his son's dedication. Time flew by. Ethan grew up, honed his skills, and became a natural leader among the school's children. By 15, he could fix almost any kind of farming equipment, from old tractors to modern harvesters with GPS and automated systems. Hope Academy had become a national model for integrated education. Delegations came from all over the country to see the project, and several similar schools were founded in different states. Robert Thompson and Melissa had rebuilt their marriage on stronger foundations. Robert Thompson had become an active advocate for children's rights, using his personal experience to warn others about the dangers of pride and manipulation. Mrs. Margaret, now almost 80, remained active at the school, telling stories to the younger children and helping in the kitchen. She had become a grandmother to all the school's children, not just Ethan. One afternoon, Ethan was working in the shop when Emily, now 15 and his official assistant, brought exciting news. "Ethan, a letter came from the State University. They want you for the mechanical engineering program." Ethan opened the letter with trembling hands. He'd taken the entrance exam more as a knowledge test than expecting to actually pass. But there it was, accepted as the top candidate for the mechanical engineering program at Pennsylvania State University. "Dad, Mom!" Ethan shouted, running to the house. Michael and Jennifer were in the kitchen preparing dinner when Ethan burst through the door, waving the acceptance letter. "I got in. I got into the State University." His parents exchanged looks of pride and concern. They knew Ethan had the potential for great things, but the university was far away, and they'd have to part ways again. "Ethan, we're so proud of you," Jennifer said, hugging her son. "But are you sure you want to go to university? You already know so much about machines." "Mom, I do want to go, but not to leave you," Ethan explained. "I want to learn more so I can come back and make the school even greater. Imagine if I could develop special machines for small farmers or systems that make agriculture more sustainable." Michael smiled, recognizing in Ethan the same passion for innovation he had felt in his youth. "Then you should go, son, and we'll be here when you return, with so much more knowledge to share." 3 months later, Ethan left for Philadelphia to begin his university studies. The farewell was emotional, with all the children from the school gathering to say goodbye. "Don't forget what we learned together," Ethan told the kids. "Family isn't defined by blood, but by love, and you'll always be my family no matter where I am." Emily, who was now Michael's lead assistant in the workshop, promised to take good care of the machines until Ethan returned. "When you graduate, I'll be here waiting to learn everything you discovered at university," she said. At the university, Ethan quickly stood out. His professors were impressed by his practical knowledge and his ability to apply complex theories to real-world solutions. He developed several innovative projects during his studies, always thinking about how his inventions could help small farmers and rural communities. His final project was a low-cost smart irrigation system that could be built and maintained locally. Every year during breaks, Ethan returned to Clearwater. Each time he brought back new knowledge and ideas to implement at the school. The mechanical workshop gradually transformed into a hub for technological innovation. By the time Ethan graduated at 22, he had become a leading figure in mechanical engineering applied to family farming. Several companies offered him well-paid jobs, but he didn't hesitate to choose to return home. "My place is here," he told Michael and Jennifer on graduation day, "right where it all began, with a broken harvester and a family who chose to love me." The end of the story. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of Ethan's journey? Do you believe love can truly overcome any obstacle? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that touch the soul.